It looks like this goes all the way to the top. I can't trust anyone, least of all the police, and time's running out. I've got to get the one piece of evidence that will expose Starkweather without a shadow of a doubt. Footage and testimony of a man who was executed by the state 5 hours ago.
James Earl Cash, found guilty and sentenced to death, has been on death row for the past 3 years and was executed last night.
Hey, tough guy, wake up. You're not dead. Well, not yet, anyway. You're getting a second chance. Another throw of the dice. As far as the world is concerned, you died back in the chamber. Justice was served. James Earl Cash is rotting in hell. Hey, get a grip and calm down. You're probably suffering from shock, aren't you? Pick up the earrings. Put it on. Go on. Now only you can hear me. And that's the way you're gonna want it, because I'm your only way out of here. Hey, easy. Look, you've had an unexpected reprieve. Do exactly as I say, and I promise this will be over before the night is out. These streets are being patrolled by gangs. They're scum, just like you. And they're here to hunt you down and cut you up. I'll try to direct you as best I can, but other than that, you're on your own. It's up to you. Okay, are you ready? Camera, action.
Welcome to Manhunt, a video game released November 18th, 2003, developed by Rockstar North, published by Rockstar. Rockstar North is a video game company located in Edinburgh, Scotland. Manhunt was revered during its release for its groundbreaking demonstrations in stealth-based combat, gore, and violence. But while it was also celebrated, it was condemned and ripped apart by the press on all fronts, even being subject to blame for a teenager's murder. Eventually, the backlash from the press made the game banned in 3 different countries, and it's banned in a few more, I believe, but the main countries were New Zealand, United Kingdom, and Saudi Arabia. It's one of the oldest tropes in the book that video games make you more susceptible to violence, and if you play a gory video game, you're going to go on a 10-day murdering spree. While some people do that, they're also extremely mentally unfit and ill. I remember reading Game Informer when I was a kid, and they were doing a review on Manhunt, and I was like so excited to get my hands on the game. I could not wait, knowing that I wasn't going to be able to play the game, because the second my parents would see the M rating, it was going to be a definite no from both of them. I remember talking to my friends after school and during school about the game, and we would look over the pictures in Game Informer and just we were mesmerized by it. And all this talk in Game Informer about the game being banned and just made it that much more cooler. It was like the BME Pain Olympics, except I was like 9 years old at that time and had no idea what the BME Pain Olympics were. And it wasn't until a couple weeks ago on a Wednesday evening, flipping through the used DVD sections at Savers, that I came across a copy of Manhunt. So I popped it in and figured I'd give it a shot. The game starts with a found footage-esque camera shot of a woman exclaiming that the story she's been chasing goes all the way to the top. She's closing in on exposing the main antagonist of the game, Starkweather, or also known as the Director. She explains that she can't trust anybody, let alone the cops, introducing the player to the corrupt hellhole they're about to dive headfirst into. The game never properly gives the journalist a name. Weird, considering she's a main character of the game, providing a sense of normality and order, justice to the dishonorable and bribable remains of Carcer City, the main setting throughout Manhunt. Kinda shitty that you find out later that the journalist is just using the story to make her career, not really caring about what happens to Cash or the fucked up slum that Carcer City has become. As you explore the city, you realize how truly terrible the state of it is in. Corrupt politicians, police, prisons, basically all and any institutions in it. So basically modern day Detroit. The game does give one subtle nod to the name of the journalist, hinting in a brief cutscene that the beginning of her name starts with R-O-B, so people have speculated that her name could be Roberta or Robin. For now, we'll just call her Rob. Rob says quickly into the camera that she's been putting this case together for a while now, and just needs this last little piece of evidence to finally build a case on Starkweather, and expose the serious piece of shit that this guy is. A man by the name of James Earl Cash. He was executed at the Carcer City Penitentiary. Rob suspects that the execution was a fake in order to break Cash out of prison, but we'll get to that later. As Cash wakes up to the sound of the director's voice, the player gets thrown into Rockstar's incredibly immersive world of Manhunt. Cash immediately throws himself into the door leading to the outside like a total crackhead. Cash picks up the earpiece and is led out into the first section of the game. Here, the player is introduced to the game with a very rudimentary tutorial and some basic instructions. This part doesn't take too long, fortunately, and you get rushed into the action pretty quick. The main story of Manhunt is fairly simple and linear. Cash is a man convicted of murder and sentenced to death. We're never really told what he did or why, but obviously it couldn't be anything short of murder, or maybe he was framed like an old school action movie like Death Race. You guys remember that? After serving 3 years on death row, he's finally executed by the state. But where the game begins is where Cash's life is supposed to end. We learn that he is saved by a man called Starkweather, the game's main villain. Starkweather is a snuff film director on his last legs. He's demented, twisted, and quite fucked up. The entire game is built around Cash going through levels, or what the game calls scenes. The theme of the game is sort of grainy, found footage type of setup, having every cutscene shot from the perspective of someone actually being behind the camera and filming. The executions are shown in this style too, making for a nice treat and a very visually appealing as you stab someone repeatedly or as you cut someone's head off with a machete. To get this nice 1980s style film grain adds a nice aesthetic to this game that not many other studios have been able to master. Starkweather makes it known to Cash that he owns him, and if Cash wants to get out of this situation alive, he needs to do exactly as the director says. Kill everything in sight in the most gruesome and depraved way possible. At first I misinterpreted what the game explained to me, thinking I was invincible and I could rush into combat like I was playing Call of Duty on easy mode. The game puts a heavy emphasis on stealth, which is shown to you in the first execution. You continue through the game killing different kinds of enemies per the director's orders. Gangs or different factions. In total, there are about 8 types of enemies that Cash will fight. The Hoods being the first gang the player runs into, the Skins, Innocents, Smiley, War Dog, SWAT, Clowns, Cerberus, and the CCPD. All the gangs have different traits and members, along with ethnicities. Some retired cops and military members, and some freaks hired by the director to do what they love best, hunt. Others are escaped criminals and the insane and mercenaries. As you move throughout the bland and fairly uninteresting story, more is revealed to the player about the true nature of the director. You bump into Rob the journalist once more and have to escort her to her apartment and get her out of the city. Having learned that Starkweather is aware of her investigation against him, he sends the CCPD on Starkweather's payroll after you and her alike. Constantly throughout the story, you are captured by Starkweather's guards and known as Cerberus. They strip you of your weapons, throw you in the back of a van, and transport you to a different level. This happens probably around 6 fucking times in this game, and it'd be a lot better if they found a different way to transition into different parts of the game because it got old really fast. As you reach the end of the game, you are eventually transported to the director's mansion, where you slaughter your way through all of his well-armed security guards, eventually coming face to face with the final boss of the game, Pigsy. After you kill the chainsaw-wielding psycho Pigsy, you disembowel Starkweather, and he begs for his life, giving you a satisfying ending to a fairly long game during its time. Now, something I'd like to commend Manhunt for is its authenticity and the way it presents its stealth. The game doesn't force you to play in a stealthy fashion, but greatly rewards the player for doing so, incentivizing the game to be played lurking throughout the shadows, picking off enemies one by one. As they murmur to themselves about how their wives are going to be so proud when they bring home some guy's head, or the men wondering about finding a quiet and peaceful corner to jerk off. The game will let you rip through certain levels, shooting everything that crosses your path, rushing into combat willy-nilly and blasting fools. If you wanted to make the game harder for yourself, that's what you'd do. Many enemies have unlimited ammo and definitely come at you in large numbers, flanking you while you're focused on another enemy or reloading. Some enemies bum rushing you with melee weapons. Certain levels in the game contain escort missions, and no, not that type of escort, you dingus. Having you protect the journalist as you sneak through multiple bribed Carcer City cops, and another escort mission where you have to safely move a homeless man throughout a level with sealed off gates only to be opened when the bum is with you, alive and well. Parts like that of the game that force player to proceed with caution, having someone else's well-being to look after, not being able to complete the mission until said person is where they need to be. Also, I hate escort missions, but they're kind of fun in this game with the bum because he's always talking about getting drunk and asking if we're going to go get vodka or a bottle. A major reason people, and myself included, found Manhunt to be some next level shit was the soundtrack and the sound design. Rockstar has proven itself throughout the years with producing some seriously amazing games with outstanding soundtracks. Imagine how much money they spend on each soundtrack in each game, buying all the rights to the major hits that each game features. From the music in all the GTA games, the amount of passion and heart that went into Red Dead Redemption's soundtrack and design, Manhunt is not an exception for this either. This game has a soundtrack so riveting and suspenseful, it'll knock your socks right off. I found myself just relishing in the immersion Manhunt creates with his beautiful and thrilling score. Each level contains a unique and terrifying track fueled with synthesizers and obscure sounds. Filled with tension around every footnote, the game creates a truly terrifying and suspenseful environment. With the inclusion of the sound the player creates in the environment when they move, allowing the sound of the footsteps on different surfaces the possibility for enemies to find you and finish you off. If you run, your footsteps are louder. Walk on gravel or broken glass, louder footsteps. Kill an enemy with a blunt object creates noise loud enough for enemies nearby to get spooked and come investigating. The noise an enemy makes while being executed just seemed so dramatic and shockingly accurate. And it's not just the same sound cue for every execution either. From choking someone out with a plastic bag to knocking someone's brains out with a baseball bat slugger, each noise has a different personalized touch that gives the player a satisfying execution, increasing the motivation to sneak up behind someone and chop their fucking head off. Anthony Banderas style. And not only can you cut someone's head off, but you can put that head around your belt and use it to scare enemies as you throw it in their vicinity. Another beautiful touch to the game's sound design is the use of the heartbeat sound effect. When things get tense, you're either seen by an enemy, fighting an enemy, in the shadows while an enemy is searching for you, the game will play this heartbeat noise that creates an imminent sense of doom and suspense. It gives you this irking feeling that they're going to catch you and you'll be finished off quickly if you're surrounded. Unfortunately, this feeling fades away towards the middle and the end of the game, having learned that you can very easily outrun enemies and just hide in a new location. At that point, the heartbeat effect kind of grows stale. Something I thought was hilarious throughout Manhunt was the use of dialogue. Cash only speaks a few times, during the hostage mission, telling his family to fuck off out of the situation, and again telling Rob the journalist, basically telling her to fuck off as well. But that's not to say Rockstar skimped on the dialogue completely. Although a lot of the dialogue and actors are reused throughout, the first times you hear them are hilarious. Some of the shit the hunters say in the game is gold, and I can understand why so many new outlets wanted this game villainized. It's original, and each gang has different personalities to each type of enemy. The clowns being weird perverts and pedophile-esque characters, the insanes being and insane, and the cops with their stereotypical cop talk. In Manhunt, each level is characterized almost primarily to which weapons the player is given. In some, you're only given one-use weapons that are destroyed after each use. Close quarters and tight areas, and enemies spread out sporadically, each on their own patterns they patrol. In the close quarters levels, there is more cover and shadows to sneak around in, and in the larger, more open levels, there is more cover to use guns and distraction devices. Throughout Manhunt, each level is different, with different objectives in order to progress through. One level, in which Cash is faced against a skinhead gang, known as the Skins, there is a scrapyard / construction site. You must maneuver your way through, avoiding a bigot, a giant fat skinhead inbred. If you alert this enemy of your presence, he will call in reinforcements and you will fail immediately. As you continue through, you have to recognize a certain enemy's pattern, make sure he doesn't find you, as there aren't many places to hide once you make the initial move to get closer to him. As you stalk him through a tiny tunnel, he mumbles about his dad being proud of him, and some of them mumble about their girlfriends back at home, gonna be so proud of them as they bring home another scalp. I died many times in this scene, getting stuck on the concrete chute above around 10 enemies. Earlier in the scene, you sneak up on a tank-esque enemy taking a dump in a trailer. You smash the window to draw him out and execute him, and after this you find the nail gun, the first firearm type weapon of the game. Immediately after this, a group of skins rush you, and you're forced to use the 10 nails the nail gun can hold, or you can hide in the trailer and take them out one by one. After obtaining the nail gun, you have to use it sparingly. It's the weakest firearm of the game, and extremely inaccurate, designed to be a last-ditch effort to pick off enemies as they overwhelm you. Ammo is scarce at this part of the game, and enemies are plentiful. The game forces you to think outside the box by introducing environmental damage. These are often barrels you can shoot to do explosive damage, bars of steel hanging down or from cranes or ceilings that will swing back and harm and kill enemies chasing you. During this mission, I was faced with my mortal enemy, my least favorite part of Manhunt, and I fucking hated this mission. I hated every part of it. The crane. Thankfully, the game only makes you do this stupid mission twice. You have to use a crane and a magnet to lift a fridge and use it to take out a barrage of enemies, and I probably died around 15 times during this mission until I finally swallowed my pride and YouTubed the tutorial on how to complete it. After finally prevailing and finishing the dreaded crane quest, I continued triumphantly onward towards the end of the level, only to be killed by a fat redneck, and I had to start all again. Fucking hate those skinheads. A nice addition to Manhunt was something a lot of other games were featuring during this time. When autosave wasn't quite developed at this point in time, many games would add in these little checkpoint saves where you wouldn't have to manually save. In fact, the manual save function in Manhunt wasn't really effective at all, having you start at the last checkpoint anyways, even if you did manually save. The way the save points work in Manhunt is the same way most checkpoint saves work in most other games of this era. As you reach the checkpoints of each scene, you'll come across a VHS tape serving as a breath of fresh air. At the end of each level in Manhunt, there is a cutscene along with a stat sheet of how you did that level, scoring you on your time to complete, amount of hunters killed, amount of hunters executed, fetish points, and the final score, giving you a score between 1 and 5. I averaged about a 3.5 every time. Talk about that average, gang. In Manhunt, there are 20 main story scenes and 4 unlockable scenes. Each scene includes running you in circles and puts you at odds with the enemies and environment. Some levels introduce light platforming and different environmental advantages. One, like climbing on top of trains to take out hunters that outnumber you 20 to 1. Some levels with secret nooks and crannies you can slip into to escape a pursuing hunter. Others are almost entirely based on stealth and creeping through the shadows, picking off unknowing enemies one by one. Towards about halfway to 3/4 into the game, the dynamic quickly shifts into a stealth-like combat-enhanced third-person shoot-'em-up. Rather than lurking about and taking a tactical advantage to combat, The player is forced into frontal confrontations with 3 to 5 enemies at a time, having to take cover and slowly move up through cover until you kill the last enemy. That does not entirely take away from the suspense of the game though, and enemies can quickly whittle down your health and will take cover the same as the player. While the enemy AI being not completely ass, they can move around, flank you, surprise you around corners with scripted prompts. So staying out of cover and firing widely into the crowd will not only waste bullets quickly, but also get you killed fairly fast. The player's health bar is incredibly low on higher difficulties, and Cash can only take 2 or so bullets depending on the range the enemy is firing from. The enemies are somewhat easy to kill with about 2 to 3 shots with the handgun, and only 1 shot with the shotgun. The easiest and best way I found to kill enemies while in gunfights was to slowly move up through cover and headshot the enemies when I got close enough. When close enough to the target, the aim assistance will allow you to hit up on the joystick to automatically kill the targets and shoot them in the head, making for an easy and precise along with satisfying kill. As your health gets low, the only source for health rejuvenation is painkillers, scattered around the levels, usually in the back corners, extra unoccupied rooms, and sometimes right out in the open. Sometimes enemies would drop painkillers, but not often. During the mission, when Cash kills Ramirez as you chase him through the building, killing enemies bombarding you as you run down the stairs, an enemy drops painkillers to help the player as they constantly get ripped apart in this close quarters fight. You only have 1 minute to stop and kill Ramirez, or he'll call reinforcements, making this chase sequence very tense and extremely easy to die. As enemies are coming out of rooms in high numbers, the devs knew this would be a difficult mission and included that sweet relief of oxycodone in order to ensure this part was actually beatable. Another way one can complete this mission is less known, more secretive way, mostly used by speedrunners of the game. After you trigger the cutscene and Ramirez starts his descent running down the stairs, the player can turn around and run back up the stairs to the top of the building to find a sniper rifle in a blown open part of the wall on the top floor. Searching for Ramirez and his cute red beret, he can be executed the second he leaves the building. This takes practice though, since there's a giant fucking tree in the way. One level in the game I had a bit of a personal issue with, in particular the hostage mission. This scene is named Strapped for Cash and is the 7th scene in Manhunt. This scene takes a dark turn early on when the director tells the player that he has 4 of his family members captured and tied up against their will, otherwise known as being taken hostage. Cash has to Liam Neeson that shit and rescue at least one of the 4 family members that have been taken. Kind of more like a half-assed Liam Neeson in Taken, where you only have to rescue 1/4 of your daughter, like her leg. The catch is, though, that if you're seen by any of these hunters during this process, they will kill whichever hostage you are closest to, thus reducing your odds of completing the mission. During my playthrough of this scene, it took me about 3 hours to complete this, because there was no command prompt to free the hostage with a sharp object by cutting the ropes that bind them, having me run around the level for about an hour looking for a hidden enemy or a pathway to lead me to the next scene. Man, I miss games like this with a linear level but almost no guidance on how to progress. Every time Cash speaks in this game, he says some pretty rude shit, even to his family. He only talks a couple times throughout the whole story. When he rescues his hostages, aka his family members, all he says are things like,
"Come on, lady."
Or,
"Go on, run, you idiot."
I mean, I understand why the director picked this guy. He's a total douche. Now, I won't really critique this game based on its graphics because that wouldn't be very fair. The game is 17 years old at the making of this video, but I think it holds up when compared to the other games of its time, having been built with the renderware engine in the late 90s and early 2000s by the same team that made the previous Rockstar GTA titles. The developers did the best with the technology they had at the time and made a game with incredible ambition and balls for its time. The one thing Manhunt was able to do right in some respect was the amount of gore they included in the game. The way it sounds when you decapitate someone really distracts you from the game's dated visuals. The game looks like shit compared to today's standards, but that's just commonplace for technology in general. At least they got the sound right. As good as Manhunt is, I have to say I have a couple gripes with it. For one, the game ends about as anticlimactic as you'd expect. You reach the director and kill him in a security room, fighting a boss that is hinted at a few times during the game in earlier sequences. That is satisfying, but you don't really get a lot of backstory on the neighborhood ice cream man, Uncle Ron, known as Pigsy. No cutscene about how he got there, no informative discussion about how he's a cold-blooded maniac, really nothing. You just show up, wake this guy up in his cute little loft in downtown New York City, and he chases you around for a bit until you send him to his doom down a stairwell. I mean, it's an interesting way to kill him, and an unexpected twist since you can't shoot him since your weapons were taken away from you, once again. But the game does add a sense of fear as you have to creep around this house without him finding you. The player sneaks up on him, stabs him, and you haul ass while crazy Uncle Ron starts chasing after you, like pig squealing like he's a fill-in vocalist for Cannibal Corpse. Dick hanging, man titty having ass can kill you after 2 or 3 hits if he catches you off guard when you're hiding in your little corner. I found him to be a bit unpredictable in regards to where you would be at any given moment, since the house you fight him in is a bit confusing. The game has 3 total bosses, if you'd like to call them that. The White Rabbit, Ramirez, Pigsy, and then that other weird baby doll-face looking guy. To get chased around by a mentally disabled chainsaw-wielding serial killer Peppa Pig cosplayer was truly suspenseful and a thrilling experience. Having not played the second Manhunt yet, I really can't comment on how well that game is or if they included more boss fights, but that's something this game could have benefited tremendously from. The fight with the White Rabbit is over as soon as it starts. You nearly just shoot him to death, and same with Ramirez. Manhunt took me about 20 hours to beat, having taken my time during each level to fully experience the process. There were a few times I was aimlessly running around, searching for my next objective or for a hidden enemy I needed to kill to trigger a gate opening or a door unlocking. That was primarily my fault, though, in the sense that I should have just looked harder and paid more attention. I think this game was monumental for video games as a whole, having been released during its time at such a high point of prejudice towards video games and their developers. Rockstar really pushed the boundaries with all their games, to all the GTA titles, Bully, and Manhunt. The developers could very easily not have put a flopping dick on the last boss of the game, and then released a limited edition statue action figure. But they did. They did do that. And they did that for us, and for free speech. This game is art. It's wonderful and fun, thrilling and exciting. Each time I picked up the controller to play Manhunt, I was excited. And I, for one, am ecstatic that Rockstar didn't give up. Games like these were so important during the early technological boom in the early 2000s. If we didn't have all these staples in video game history that these brave men and women created, well, who knows what kind of baby-back bullshit we'd be playing now. My final rating for Manhunt is a 7 out of 10. There were a lot of repeated tropes, a bit of stale story, and obviously the game is old. The cover systems and controls were a bit fucky, and it could have used a bit more work in terms of compelling characters and story. But I also understand that this game is almost 20 years old now. The game is worth it to play, so go download it illegally or look through your stepdad's old Atari box in the attic and see if his old buddy Steve accidentally borrowed it to him and your dad never gave it back. I don't know. Make sure to like and subscribe. This is my first official video here on YouTube, so it'd mean a lot. Also, come follow me on Twitch. I stream every Sunday, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Make sure to follow me on Twitter and Instagram along with Facebook because I also do stream on there. Links down in the description below. Thank you all for tuning in on this review on Manhunt, the game that pushed boundaries.